what's happening. I know around you, some of you are just coming out of service. I'm quite sure some will catch this sometime in the day. So I'm not too much worried about that. But we just had a great service at the Lord. We were reminded about Jesus. Let's talk about Jesus. There's so much that people are talking about, finding all sorts of subjects. There are, and there is so much in our really to take our mind off the Lord to concentrate on other things. But most important subject that should be in our hearts, in our minds, on our tongues, really is about Jesus. And I just want to encourage you, just as how Paul, again, it all ties in again with the letter here that Paul was writing to the Corinthians. Now, look at all the letters that Paul has written. First and Second Corinthians, Galatians, Ephesians, Philippians, Colossians, First and Second Thessalonians, and his works. What is the main theme of his letters? What is the main theme? Yes, there were underlying issues taking place in all of these local churches in every area of that he wrote to. Yes, and there are a lot of other things that's happening in our lives, in our churches, in our fellowships, in our communities that we need to address. You can't look at the sun and address the road, or you can't look at the road and say you want to fix that, but yet look at the moon and say how high it is, because they just don't correlate. Yeah, it's about looking at the road, pointing to it, and saying what needs to be done. That's what Paul was doing. The letters that Paul writes to the churches that in which he wrote to had issues. They had particular areas in which Paul had to address. But the underlying theme and thought, or what Paul wanted to get across to every and to each member, and more often than not, to the leadership of the church. Each letter, remember, each letter that Paul wrote was addressed to the leadership of the church, because if the leadership isn't right, then don't expect the laity or the followers, the sheep, to be right either. But the main thrust and thought that Paul was trying to remind them of was Jesus. He says, let's talk about Jesus. Remember what Jesus did for you. Remember that he died for you. Remember that you need to be changed. Remember that you need to be reconciled to God through Jesus. Everything is about Jesus. There is nothing, in as much as, we as ministers, and I say, when I say we, I'm trying to, highlight everyone. I want to include everyone. We read the scriptures and we get very big topics out of it, very interesting thoughts that come to our minds that we want to share with people. And that is good, because that keeps people interested. Every Sunday in some churches, they want the leadership wants to put a theme, they want to put a topic, they want to put something so that it grabs the minds of people. Well, the only thought and the only thing that really people need to think about is Jesus. It's all about Jesus. Doesn't matter how good, how memorable the thought is. It doesn't really matter how captivating the message may be by way of the topic of it, but it's all about Jesus. Don't complicate the issue. We sometimes make it so complicated that even those who are quote unquote intelligent, they themselves lose their way. And they don't even remember why they're there or why we are here. It's not a complicated issue. It's all about Jesus. And that's what Paul here was talking about in 2 Corinthians chapter 5. For he hath made him to be sin. Jesus was made sin. And we looked at the first part, which I looked at, which was Christ had no sin. One of the very reasons Jesus Christ came to earth was to live a sinful life, to show that we could do it. Now, the second thought that I want to bring out of this very same verse is God made him, or God made him who had no sin to be sin for us. This was absolutely necessary. Why? Because man needs more than just righteousness to stand perfect before God. Yes? To stand righteous before God is not enough. Now that's there is deep enough, it's very that deep if you want to think about it, because it's not so much that, you know, it's not what we do, it's not what we think, it's not what we say. We can't do anything of ourselves. So we can always, present ourselves as if, we are righteousness. But it's something greater and deeper than that. It takes the Son. It takes the Son and what he had done to reconcile us before the Father. Yes. For man has already sinned. Man already stands guilty of breaking God's law, and the judgment and condemnation of death has already taken effect upon man. That is why we die daily. And when I say die daily, men all over the world die. And we die in two ways, spiritually as well as physically. Look what's happening in our world. The virus is all over us, it's all over the world. That is the problem of man. Now, many may not agree. Many may think, well, I have no foundation for that. And many probably would even think I'm crass or not very, you know, um, not, I don't see the picture for what it is. But it's because of the sin of man why we're in this dilemma. And we just won't own up to it. Mankind won't own up to it. All have sinned. Because of sin, my friends, we die. From the very moment Adam sinned, he began to die. Not only spiritually, but physically also. If we didn't, if Adam and Eve did not disobey God, they would be alive today. And who knows? We wouldn't have illness. We wouldn't have a virus to deal with. And this is not the first virus that man has had to deal with. In this magnitude, yes. But there are other viruses, there are other illnesses that man has had to deal with over the years, even before we were born. Vaccines and antidotes have been looked at. So, my friends, let me just share this with you, that it is all about God, being reconciled to God. And we can only be reconciled through Jesus Christ. He took on your sin. He took on my sin, that I may have the opportunity to stand in his righteousness, not in my righteousness, but in his righteousness, that the Father may accept me because I am a sinner. Even clothed in the righteousness of the Son, I am still clothed in filthy rags. But it is but by the mercy, unmerited favor of God, why we have been accepted of the Father. When he looks at the Son and then he looks at me, he forgives me and helps me to be and to begin a right relationship with God. May God bless. Have a great day, and I'm sure that if you are allowed to live to see Monday morning, it is again the unmerited favor of God, the goodness of God on our lives. I know you've had a great day. I know some of you have had this, and I trust, my friends, that as you bask in what you've heard there, and if what I've said is of any worth, I trust that that will be added on to what you have heard, and that it will make you even much more stronger in your mind and have and give you the mind to persevere that much further to know. God bless you. Have a great